So today's training for March 4th, 2025 is titled The New Process for NEMSIS Standard Change Requests. And we are so delighted to have Jen Correa be the host for today. Again, like I said, if you have questions or comments during the presentation, please raise your hand or put it into the chat and we will get you unmuted, or we will tell Jen that there's a question in there. But other than that, Jen, are you ready to go?
I think we can do it. Let's
Perfect.
go. Thank you very much, Chris. And thank you everyone for taking the time to join us. I want to give a big welcome and shout out to all of you. We know that everyone is busy, so the fact that you've taken an hour out of your day to join us is really appreciated. And the other important part is we have EMS stakeholders. I was kind of watching as folks were joining in the room, and we have people from all across the EMS industry that have joined us today. So that is a real integral part of what has made the NEMSIS data standard so successful, is that we do it in partnership here from the NEMSIS Technical Assistance Center with all of the EMS stakeholders, right? That's how the data standard was derived way back in the beginning, back in the late 90s, right? And then really started to get going in the early 2000s. But we did it through partnership, and we did it through working with you and all of our EMS stakeholders. So just a big thank you. And let's go ahead and get started. So one of the things that I did realize as I was putting this together is we may have a real wide range of people who have joined us today. Some may not be as familiar with NEMSIS as others. So I'm going to give a very brief synopsis of what is NEMSIS. So NEMSIS is the data standard, right? So that is the standard of collecting the data, and the system keeps track of all the details that go into your EPCR. So the first question we usually get asked is, why is that needed? Well, the National Data Standard provides a consistency in the terminology and the definitions and how the data is being reported. It creates a level playing field for all of the documentation, right? This allows analysis, integration, interoperability. It makes it so that your system can talk to your billing system. It makes it so that your EPCR software can talk to the state's EPCR software. So that's the importance of having the standard. It allows everyone and all of the data to flow back and forth. So it also allows for analysis and benchmarking and research, right? We collect the data here at the National Data Repository at the TAC. We clean it, we store it, and we share it. And that's where the research and everything comes in. So the how is also usually the second question we get asked. And that is really, like I said earlier, developed with all of you stakeholders, all aspects of the EMS industry. We've even talked with CAD folks, right? Like what information when you're dispatching a call is important. And we talked to the agencies, what information you're getting from CAD should be included in the EMS data standard. What do you need to have in that EPCR? We talked to the agencies, we talked to the states. What do you need to collect at the state level, right? What do you need to collect at the local level? And so that kind of takes us right into what the National EMS data standard looks like. And many of you have probably seen this before. So right here, what I want to point out is this is the NEMSIS data standard, this big blue pie right here. It's big. And the reasons it's big is because we're picking and choosing what parts of that NEMSIS data standard we're going to use at each individual level that we have within the standard. Notice up here, the red pie, this is the national level. We get the smallest bit of data up at the National Data Repository. That is, when you're looking at the data dictionary and you see these red N's over here, that means it's a national element, and that comes up to the national level. And then you have the next piece of pie, which is your state data set. So they have to collect the national, right? So that they can report that up to us. And then the state gets to say, and we want this, and we want this, and we want this, and we want all the different pieces that is important to the state. And here you go, we've created our state data set. And then there are agencies that have to go beyond even what the state has, because they need to collect extra bits of information to inform their local agencies. And so you got your local state data set. So that's kind of why I know a lot of people go, oh my goodness, there's over 600 data elements. But that's to allow for that picking and choosing at each level to really determine what needs to be collected to satisfy the needs of the different folks in the EMS industry. It is also, I do like to point out that there are 14 mandatory elements within the EMS EPCR dataset that are national elements. There are 14. There are 18 elements within the demographic data set. And those are the different pieces of what makes up the full entire NEMSIS data standard, right? So you have your EMS, which is your EPCR. You have your DEM, which is your demographics. That's where the agencies enter their information. And then you have the state data set, and that's where the states enter their information. And you put those three things together and you get the entire NEMSIS data standard. So I think that's brief enough. If there's any questions, let me know. We have the team here that'll be watching the chat, so feel free to put those into the chat. Let's talk a little bit about the NEMSIS data standard change process. This is a little bit different. It has most of the same aspects of what was going on before, but we actually have written them down. They're in a process, and there's more communication back and forth with the original requesters. Just to let you know, we do have some older requests that are still in the queue that kind of we're doing the best we can to remember, find notes about who the original requester was. So if you have something that's really old and you want to let us ask us where it is, please feel free to reach out to the NEMSIS help desk and ask about that. All right, so here we go. This is what the flow chart looks like. And I want to point out where your piece starts is up here on this requester line. And you'll notice that there's inform requester. That's a big piece of what we're going to try and do here at the NEMSIS Technical Assistance Center is not only work with you to create what you are requesting and to create a mock-up and get your approval of that, but we're going to keep you informed as it flows through the rest of these steps. So the first thing you do as a requester is you open a ticket via the NEMSIS help desk. No, we don't want these to come in through email. And the reason is because we're doing all of our tracking through that help desk ticket, right? So that help desk ticket is kind of think of it as the source of truth, right? This is what you've asked for. This is where all of our work will be done. This is where the mock-up will be contained. You can always reference back to your help desk ticket. So it's important that we do this through the NEMSIS help desk. And then we work with you here, and anyone at the TAC can work with you on your request. It doesn't have to be me. And we review the request for the required information. So that's what we're asking is there already a way to do this in NEMSIS, right? So if someone says, hey, I want to collect the total GCS score, there's an element for that already in eVitals. So we would say, oh, well, it's already there. This is what it is. Is that what you were asking for? And if that is, oh, great, already have it. Thanks. We close the ticket. But if you're saying, oh, no, I didn't mean that. I wanted to get the total GCS part B, right? If that existed. Oh, okay, we don't collect that. And we would work with you and figure out exactly what you wanted it to look like. You will approve the mockup, right? And then once we have a mockup and we have your approval, we create an internal ticket. This is an internal ticket at the TAC so our IT developers can track it in their development system, right? Then it will go to the change review committee. The change review committee is made up of people across the EMS industry. There's billing representatives, vendor representatives. There's an EMS medical director. We have the NESEMSO chair-elect pro tem, right? So he is on it. We have the NESEMSO NEMSIS liaison, they're on it. So we have in our EMT, we've got a researcher, we've got business intelligence developer on there, which is a report writer, right? How is what we're looking at going to intersect with the reporting that needs to be done? And then we have folks from the TAC who are on the review committee that listen and talk and guide and talk about schematron rules. Well, if we make it this change that they've asked for, do we want to recommend a schematron rule that goes along with it? Things like that. The change review committee can do a couple of different things, right? They can approve the change as is, and then it flows to the next level, which is all EMS stakeholders. They can make additional changes, like let's say they want to put a comma in the definition, or it said medical surgery history, and they wanted to say medical surgical history, right? They can make those kind of changes, and we would not send that back to the original requester. But they could say, and we have one actually right now that's in process where they wanted to add values to the original request, and they had a reason they wanted to add the values. So I sent that back to the original requester. I said, hey, the change review committee has looked at this. They're requesting to add these additional values. What are your thoughts? Right. And so when the change review committee gets back together next month, they meet monthly. When they get together next month, then they can go through and say, oh, okay, this is the thoughts of the original requester. This is what we were talking about. Here's where they mesh. And then we can make those changes if everyone's in agreement, and then it moves to the next stage. The only time we don't move it forward is if there's some real confusion about what was trying to be collected by the whole change review committee, or if there's a real question about what they were looking at. Then we're going to say, okay, wait, let's take the whole thing back to the requester. The NEMSIS TAC needs to work with them more. And maybe it's just that the NEMSIS TAC did not explain it well enough, right? And so the original requester can then, say, oh, no, this is how you should have said it. Here, write out this justification a little bit better and send it back to the review committee. And it's a real iterative process, right? Because we want these changes by the time we take them to the EMS stakeholders to be a really well-developed change request. We don't want to bring in front of you something that's half developed, and so that we're talking about the same thing repeatedly for a year before we can come to a consensus on those change requests. So the next stage, once the change review committee is done talking about it and it has moved on to all EMS stakeholders, this is where all of the EMS stakeholders get to hear about it, get to see the mock-up. It gets talked about at NESEMSO, medical directors meetings, state data manager council meetings, possibly the custom element subcommittees, right? Like there's CPMIH committees. The NESEMSO has quite a few committees. They do a lot of work working on the elements and the data collection, and EPCR users groups, the vendors. That's another big important one that we want to hear input from, right? They're the ones who have to implement this in a usable way for all of you. Billing stakeholders, we really don't want to do anything that's going to affect reimbursement. So we've got to get those billers in to talk about us. The NEMSIS has an advisory board. It's a 2-year board. The new 2025-2026 board has their first meeting later this week. And then EMS subject matter expert organizations. So this could be, if we're talking about an ID, which is something that the DMC is currently working on, right? They will go to the NREMT. They will talk to them, get their input on it. Like, is there anything that you're seeing that really flies in the face of what we should do? So those kinds of groups, and we're all going to talk about it. Once everybody has gotten enough input, they have been able to say their piece, been able to put in their notes, and we can record those, then we can move forward to a vote, right? And everyone has a chance to vote. And then once it's being voted on, you'll get a NEMPUB ticket. And for those of you who have seen this process before, the NEMPUB is our public facing so that everyone can see it. This is where the mock-up will be. This is where the original requester's information, as far as not who it was, but why they were requesting it, what their justification was, and then any comments that we received during the EMS stakeholder comments session, right? Those are going to be included for everyone to see. We're going to give another 30-day comment period so that anyone who didn't get a chance to talk during this one has a chance right here. And then the all EMS stakeholder vote for inclusion or not. And we have not determined what voting mechanism we will use, but it will be one that tracks the voting and who's voted, as far as not who you are, but what you do, right? So if it is a clinical element, there may be weight put toward the clinical folks who are voting on it, right? So your data managers council, which is mostly made up of clinicians, if they voted on it and it's a clinical one, they have more weight to their vote. And that's because it's clinical. If it's a billing from the e-payment section, the billers may have a more weighted vote, right? Because they are the billers and they're the experts in that area. And then once we've done all of this, and if it's a no, and you'll notice through every step, we come back to this informed requester. And that's really important. That's the piece that we really are pushing out there, is that we're going to let that original requester through the help desk, through the original ticket, know as it goes to each stage. And then once, if it's a yes, we move it to the update the NEMPUB that, hey, there was a vote, this was the vote. And we let NHTSA know, hey, this was the vote, this was the process that was followed, here are all the comments. And we send it to them to get any input from them. And that is the full change request process. That is what every request will go through. All right, perfect. And then let's go ahead. Sorry, I thought I saw a comment come in and it did not. And then we go to what can I do, right? How does this affect me? Okay, great. Who's going to do the requesting? You guys are, right? Like every EMS stakeholder out there. I have currently different requests from agencies, from clinicians, from states, from vendors. I have one from a manufacturer of equipment, right? He's like, hey, if you collect the data a little bit differently and they're using these, they would tell us how it affected the patient, right? Was it good? Was it bad? Those kinds of things. We get it. We'll take them from anyone because we're not the ones that are going to, the NEMSIS Technical Assistance Center is not the one who's going to decide whether it makes it into the standard. That is what you are going to do. So how can you impact the standard? Give us the ideas, work with the TAC, have an idea about what you want to collect and how you want to collect it. That will help us work with you, right? Your ideas really can make a difference. This is a great graphic. The improvement to the documentation process in your area could be useful across the nation. So if you're, for example, you're in a rural area and there's a piece of information, I'm trying to think of something that's not already in there, that is super important for your rural areas. There are rural areas across the country, right? So this could really make an impact. You're like, oh, I'm collecting the, I'll use something silly, the paint striping on the road where we picked up this patient out in the middle of the wilderness, that there was none, right? It was a single leg dirt road, right? And that was important to have in that EPCR. And you say, oh, this could make a difference in all rural areas. Okay, great. Let's get that in there. Let's get it talked about. Let's discuss it. One of the suggestions that was actually brought up last year is the ability to note multiple units from the same agency within one EPCR, right? Something that the DMC worked on really hard. We actually ended up being a national custom element was leave behind the lock zone. They wanted to be able to compare their data across the nation. And to do that, they have to collect the data in the same way. That's why the standard is important. And that's why coming up with these is important. And if you're like me, you think, oh, my idea is not that great. It's okay. But there are no bad ideas. I love this example that members somewhere in a room, in a movie studio, someone say, I have a great idea. Let's put sharks in tornadoes and have them attack people in Colorado, right? That was actually an idea. And it made a lot of money for a lot of people. And it doesn't sound good all by itself, but once they developed it, it was great. So your ideas really can create change, not just in your community and in your local area, but across the country. So please remember, there are no bad ideas. Change is possible. And that's an important thing. If you take nothing away from today, please take that change is possible. It might be slow, but it does happen. There are new elements and new values, rule adjustments, removing rules, right? Adding rules, take away an element, put it this way is a better way to collect this information, or this way is an alternate way to collect this information. Corrections to spelling errors, we are not perfect. So every time we come out with a new version, there's at least a dozen grammatical corrections or spelling corrections or something like that. A link doesn't work within the data dictionary, right? There's all kinds of things that can be changed. We have 3 of them in there now from just after 351 was released in January. Someone said, hey, you have these spelling errors, right? So we put them in the ticket to get it updated on the next one. Changes to allow different approaches to the documentation, like the multiple units from one agency, right? Changes to how an element is collected by using another data standard. What that means is, you know how we use ICD-10 for the impressions? Well, there's other data standards out there that may be able to benefit and interchange with what we collect in our EPCR. One that I just got that I think is a really great idea that could go, could not go, but eVitals 24, the temperature. There's no way to do high or low. And in some extreme areas with extreme temperatures, their thermometer doesn't get that low, right? For that patient. So they wanted to be able to mark low and be able to compare it. And they thought, well, if I do have that happen locally, it probably happens in other places too. And that's exactly what we're trying to get at. Things to consider when you're thinking about the change that you want to ask for is, the first step in the process is to ask, what do I want to change? What do I think would benefit? How do I want it to go? What is this going to do, right, for the NEMSIS standard? What is this going to do for the EMS industry? How is this going to be helpful? Is there a source for this information that could include it in the EPCR? Or is this something an agency would know when they're setting up their system, right? So maybe it's a demographic and not part of the EPCR. Would the EMS clinicians completing the EPCR know? That is that last question on this slide. And I think that's a really, really important thing to keep in mind. If you want this to be part of the EPCR and it's not something that EMS clinicians would know, how do we get that information? Is there an interoperability possibility that you're looking at? Is this something that would come from CAD that would be consistent to be able to come from CAD? Is this like the outcome section where you're hoping to get it back from the hospital? So keep those things in mind. And those are the types of questions that we're going to ask you as you start to work with the TAC on your ideas. Those are the things that we'll go over with you as well. Other things to consider, is this EMS information or supplemental to an EMS call that'll come in later, right? So that goes right back to that interoperability. Is this something my EMS clinician is going to know? Is it consistent, which means is blue in California and blue, code blue in Colorado and code blue in Kansas and Florida and New York, is it all the same? Or could it possibly be different? A good example of this is code 3. I actually live in an area where code 3 means one thing in one county and you cross the county line and code 3 means the opposite in the county next door, right? So is it consistent across the EMS systems or is there a different way we can put it? And of course, we are always here at the Technical Assistance Center to help you with that. Now we get to the fun part. How do you submit the change request? It's pretty simple, actually. You go to the help desk. And we have a button now at the very bottom for NEMSIS standard change requests. And this QR code will take you to the help desk. If you don't already have it bookmarked in your favorites, please do so. Anytime you want to contact us, that is the best way to do it. So you'll submit a change. And I'm giving it just a minute in case folks want to do the QR code. And then you want to include as much information as possible. And I have some samples of that. So you'll enter your email. And email is the best way to do it so that we can get back to you with our questions and things like that. And then the type of change that you're having. Are you adding something new, deprecating, changing? And then the other change requests, because sometimes we get requests about schematron rules. Sometimes we get requests from vendors about the WSDL or anything like that. So there's an other change request. If it doesn't fit into one of these 4, please put it into the other. And then the additional information is where you're going to put all of the information that you've gathered that you know so far. And so for this change request, please add a value for patient eye color because that's super important. We all want to know that. Justification, eye color is important to medication administration. The descriptions for eye colors would be blue, brown, green, brown, purple, and are consistent across the nation. Include all the information you think would be important, right? And then someone from the Technical Assistance Center is going to reach out and we're going to ask you questions. And we're going to go back and forth once or twice. And then we're going to eventually come up with a mock-up that has all of the information that you've been giving us, right? So this is a new element. So we're not sure exactly what number it would end up being at the end of it. So we're just putting numbers in as placeholders. But when we talked about it, you wanted it in the e-patient section. And you wanted the definition to be the color of the patient's iris, right? You wanted pertinent negatives and not values and have it be nullable, right? So we've got all of that information. And then when we were talking, I asked the question, well, is this for both eyes? What happens if they've got two different color eyes? What happens if they're missing an eye? And so you said, oh, yeah, that's right. Gosh. So we're going to say left, right, and both. And we're going to create an attribute that lets us know which eye location it is. And we're going to include the pertinent negative of exam finding not present for when an eye is missing, right? So that's the kind of thing that we're going to go back and forth with. And then if you want to put a comment in here, we put the comment in there, right? There is, also the how many times can it recur? Well, you've got two eyes. If they're two different colors and you record it, it could be many, right? And it's a recommended. It's not a state element. It's not a national element when we ask for it. Now, let's say we get closer to the end of the process and all of the states and the DMC come forward and say, hey, we really like this element. We want to collect it everywhere. So can you please make it a state element? You betcha. We can do that, right? The state just has to say that they want it to be a state element. And then let's say Clay says, hey, color, that's the new thing. We got to definitely collect it at the national level. Then we can start talking about whether or not it needs to be a national element. And that would be a conversation that goes to all the stakeholders, right? We would have that conversation with you of whether or not we wanted that to be a national element. What else should you know? There are a couple different types of changes. We have major, minor, and critical patch. A major version is denoted in the first leftmost number. So when you see 3.4 or you see 3.5, that is the major version. It is not backwards compatible between the two without translating the information within the files. So that basically means it's not equal, right? There's either a new element that is in 3.5 that wasn't in 3.4, or there's a new value that wasn't in 3.5 that is in 3.5 that wasn't in 3.4. Or there's something that was required in 3.4 that is no longer in 3.5, right? So they don't talk to each other without translating the files. Minor. A minor version is denoted by the third number. So when you say 3.40, 0 is that minor version. 3.50, 3.51. That tells you that they're two different, the major version is the same, but they're two different minor versions of the same major. Those are backward compatible without translation. That's the key to being a minor change, a minor version change, is that you can send them back and forth between each other without translating the information within them. And then we have the critical patch, and the critical patch that we used as the example here was from 3.5 when we added the American College of Surgeons new trauma values, right? So the critical patch was denoted at the end of the version number preceded by CP, and that happened to be the fourth critical patch of version 3.50. All right, and no chat questions yet, just wanted to double check. And then change takes time. These ideas are going to be discussed by the TAC with you amongst ourselves, because we have to, at the TAC, have to make sure that when we're working with the requester, we've thought of everything. So we're going to take this back to our teammates and say, hey, I'm working on this change request. This is where we're going with it. Is there anything else I should suggest? Is there any other questions I should ask? We're going to work on it as a team with the requester. The change review committee is going to talk about it. The SME groups are going to talk about it. The EMS stakeholders are going to talk about it, right? So this takes time. It's not something that happens very, very quickly. If it's something that you need right away, you may want to talk to your vendor about a custom element. And if you're a state, you may want to approach your DMC and see if other states need it right away as well. And they may start working on a custom element to recommend to have as a national custom element. So if it's something that you need right away, there are different avenues that you can take. And then you can also, at the same time you're doing that, also submit the request to have it become part of the standard later, if that's what you would like to do. EMS stakeholder discussion, these are the different groups, right? If you're not already part of the EPCR users group and you are an agency, this is for EMS clinicians and EMS provider agencies, not for states or vendors. And it's a chance for them to talk and talk about issues that they may have, get their input in, learn more about NEMSIS from their point of view. Casey's doing a great job running that group. We have our B3 implementation calls, which happen the second and fourth Wednesday of every month. Everyone's invited. These are public meetings. They are recorded. They are available on our YouTube channel, and you can watch them. They are all there. And so we talk about them on those. You can create your own. There are quite a few states now, and even some of the local RAPs, local regional advisory councils, that have started to create their own data committees, right? So they can have these conversations, what they need locally and what they're looking for. So creating your own is a great idea. And there are some states that are starting to do that as well. And this is where I would like to make another pitch and also say thank you again, because I really do believe that part of what has made the NEMSIS standards so successful and have such a positive impact on the EMS industry is that there's a broad group of subject matter experts that provide input into it, that we hear from all of you, and that everything is considered before things move forward. I know it's not an overnight process. I know that it can take a little while to get into the standard. But any requester will be kept informed along the way. And I think these discussions and having so many people be able to have input is what will keep the standard a real quality standard. And that is, if you want more information or you want to contact us, again, here is the help desk. It's the same help desk that you would go to submit a standard change request. So please feel free to go there, ask questions, or anything like that. And I have tried to keep an eye on the chat, and I haven't seen any questions come in. Does anybody want to raise their hand and be unmuted or ask a question?
Hey, Jen, can ask a quick question here?
Sure.
So you mentioned like time frames on this, and it seems like it could vary quite a bit, but could you give us a little bit of an idea of like one that's gone through that has taken like a long time or a short amount of time, not holding you to anything, but just like in an idea of time frame?
So it all depends on when the minor and major versions are released. So I will tell you, if your change request is a major change request, it is going to take longer because you have to wait for the next major version change. If it's a minor change, it'll go in the next minor version change. So that is really what will drive the time frame of when these will become part of the standard. That is why I said if it's something that you need immediately, you might want to consider going about it through the custom, which is why the custom elements do exist, why you're able to make those custom elements at the local or state level, and collect them there is for this very purpose. So I can tell you we have one change that has been there, and it's for the next major change. It came in right after 3.5 was released in 2019, just a couple months later, but it would be a major change. So we're waiting for that major change before that one gets put in.
Perfect, thank you. And we do have a question from Sundown. He's asking, can you share again who is the organizer for the EPCR users group?
That's Casey Greger. And if you want to become part of the EPCR users group, you can actually contact the help desk. and leave your name and your email, and just let them know you want to become part of the EPCR users group.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jen. If anyone else, if you come up with another question, you think about this later and you come up with another question, please feel free to send it through the help desk. We will be more than happy to get it the question to who needs to answer it. If you want to be notified for about events like this and other important announcements that come out from the NEMSIS TAC, if you go to our website, nemsis.org, and then look in the upper right-hand corner, there's a big red button that says sign me up, and you can then you will get all of the major messages for our V3 calls, trainings like this, the annual meeting, and other important announcements from the NEMSIS TAC. Also, if you get a chance, you can find us on all the major and some minor social media sites. Yeah, Blue Sky. Come and take a look over there and see how things are going over there. Um, this video, this has been recorded, and Jen, I believe that you have created at the beginning of this presentation the brand new "What is NEMSIS" video that is going to go on to the "What is NEMSIS" portion of our website. Congratulations! Very well done and succinct uh, description of what we do here. I really appreciate it. But this video will also be available on our YouTube channel and on our website. So if you want to share this information with a colleague or someone else that you think might be interested, or you want to review this information, this training and our previous trainings going back 7 years are also on our YouTube channel and our website. So perfect. Thank you, everybody, for making it out today and taking some time to spend with us. If I can get a big virtual round of applause for our presenter, Jen Correa. Always fascinating and informative and wonderful to hear all the great things that you're working on. I loved all the flow charts and everything here. The visual learning here was really helpful. So thank you very much, Jen.
You are very welcome.
Awesome. Everybody have a great day, and we'll see you soon.